I built a Lego room. A couple months back, my wife and I bought a new house that has a sick detached garage with a little extra space on the side. I figured, I'm a builder, can't be too hard to turn this into a usable space. Right now there's 2 door-sized openings to the carport side of the garage, but I'm gonna go with this one and close up the studs on the other side. There's also a lovely crack in the cinder block that will need to be filled in. Overall, it's a great space, and I can't wait to start finishing it. Figured the best place to start would be to grab some quick measurements and draw up the space using SketchUp, which is definitely my go-to software for stuff like this. I used some sealant and expanding foam to cover the cinder block and fill that crack and a few other holes that I found. I then enclosed the room with plywood boards to better section it off from the rest of the garage. It actually kind of looks like a room now. Decided I might as well add the door now because why not? The wall insulation went up really quick. It's pretty straightforward. You just roll it out and staple it in. I had a little extra on it, but I'll probably just toss that in the attic for more protection against the elements. Next up, I did the drywall. Huge shout out to these guys for giving me a hand. And always remember to keep that camera rolling.
Oh, I'm going. Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
It ended up taking the better part of an afternoon, but we got it all done. And it looks great. When doing drywall, you have to cover up the seams with tape and mud. It wasn't too bad at first, but after the 3rd coat of mud and all the dust from sanding, it gets pretty annoying and messy. Taking a break from that, I decided to insulate the attic. I rented this cool machine that basically churns up the loose fill and spits it out like some kind of fiberglass snowstorm. I bought more than I needed to for adhering to building code, so it should insulate really well. Now back to the torture that is drywall and its dust. I had a totally awesome idea that if I used a leaf blower, I could just blow it all out. But that backfired pretty quickly. So I decided to take the more conventional route and just wipe everything down with a damp towel. Now that that's relatively cleaned up, I can finally paint the walls. I started with just your standard primer and ended up doing 2 coats of white on everything but the back wall. I brought an actual Lego brick to the hardware store and they were able to color match it perfectly. And after a couple coats and some help cleaning my mistakes from my beautiful wife, we have a nice red wall. The flooring was probably the closest thing I did to building Lego on this project. It also makes for a solid time lapse. The boards snap together really well, and while it's nice to have 2 people, it's not too bad as a one-man job. It definitely got a little more complicated as I got to the end, and I still need to add a threshold, but I think it looks fantastic. Next, I did the trim work for the door, window, and to cover up that space between the drywall and the floor. I love that it covers up that rough edge of the drywall. It just makes the room look so much more clean. This place is gonna house all of my Lego, so I don't want it to get too hot or too cold, so it has to be air conditioned. I decided to go with a mini split unit. A bit more complicated than a window unit and a space heater, but should be pretty efficient. With the lines through the wall, I mounted the unit outside and got everything hooked up. And now I have heat. If I'm gonna be throwing together massive builds in here, I'm gonna need a massive table. I started by gluing these boards together to form the tabletop. I cut some 4x4s to make the legs and framed the lower part of the table with 2x4s. Now that the top is all dried, I can throw it on with some glue and clamps. I decided to add some adjustable feet just in case the legs aren't perfectly the same height to remove any wobble that might happen. I added this cool foldable edge that magnetizes to the table so I can have the table be flat if I need to slide something off, but also have walls to hold loose pieces for sorting. I decided to paint the lower part of the table black and have the top be white so that whatever I'm building pops. It unintentionally looks like our Mini Cooper. I need a desk, so I decided to change my original design and go with a floating shelf structure. To do this, you essentially make a box that's missing a side and have the inside of the box perfectly fit a 2x4. Then, while the glue's drying, you build a frame. I use these massive screws and it almost held up the frame with 1. So naturally I used 6, all screwed into studs. With the glue dried, I got the whole thing nice and sanded. And now for probably the most satisfying part of this whole project. I secured it to the frame with a couple smaller wood screws, and it is solid. I then painted it white to match the tabletop. Next, I need a box. This will serve multiple purposes. It will hide the pipes that were sticking out of the concrete slab, it will hide the wires for my computer, Xbox, and monitors, and it will be a footrest for when I'm sitting at my desk. There's nothing too fancy about it. I gave it a handle and hinges so that I can open it up, and painted the whole thing black to match the legs of the table. With some help from my brother-in-law George, I got it installed. I decided to have the trim on the walls go around the box to give it a more built-in look. George also helped me with some cleaning. I added the wall mounts for my monitors and hooked them all up. I was able to run a lot of the cables into the wall and have them come out inside the box to make it more organized. I took the shelves and brackets I built at our old place and cut them down to be a bit smaller. It was pretty easy getting them spaced out properly and installed. I finally started to bring out my collection and put some of the builds that survived the move on the shelves. Safe to say there were a lot of casualties. Now for the finishing touch, my logo. My brother let me borrow his projector so I could outline the shape with a pencil, and then I filled it all in. It's crazy editing this video and looking back at what the room was when we bought the place and seeing how different it is now. And just like that, I have a complete Lego room. I still need a lot more shelving for displaying stuff and organizing my sealed set collection, but I am super happy with how much I've done. Thank you so much for watching this whole process, and expect more videos now that I have the space and time to make them. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you amazing people in the next one. And cut.